You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
We have barely dipped our toes in September, and already I am so busy I have talked myself hoarse. And I am just about to go back on tour again, which means that decent meals at decent times are going to be just out with my grasp. And like the lead up to travel and gigs, I am all over the place that I just don't have the time or like the mental capacity to plan and organise decent grub for myself. Things would be so much easier for me if I had access to something like Factor's no prep, no mess meals. But living here in rural Ireland, I can't. But I did get one of my besties to actually try it out for me. And she really enjoyed the Indian butter tofu, lentils and rice with curry spiced spinach and potatoes. The best of all of the vegetables. Like she was saying, it even smelt good frozen. And the fact that it was ready in only 2 minutes. No prepping, no shopping, no cleanup. Just fantastic. Now she's veggie, was worried there wasn't going to be like that great of a selection, but she had so much choice. So whether you're looking for something meat-free, to manage your calories, or to increase your protein intake, there's a meal plan to fit your lifestyle. So head to factormeals.com/whatnow50 and use code whatnow50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code whatnow50 at factormeals.com/whatnow50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active.
If your business needs a new application, then developers will have to write code. A lot of code. If an application needs to be modernized, then you'll need time, resources, and caffeine. If this sounds daunting, then use Watson X Code Assistant. Built with IBM's Granite code model, it's AI designed to multiply developer productivity so you can generate code quickly. Learn more at ibm.com/code assistant. IBM, let's create.
Hello, delicious friends, and welcome to Who Did What Now, the history podcast that's not your history class, with me, your host, Katie Charlwood, history harlot and reader of books. Yes, my voice does sound a wee bit weird this week. Thank you for noticing. Yeah, I clearly cannot take care of myself after a live show / performance / anything like that, because every time, bugger up my voice a wee bit. I think I have to start drinking lemon and honey or whatever they gave Matthew Lillard on the Scooby-Doo movies, because that's what I need, because clearly I get very intense on the stage. So mainly the rant at the end about Jack the Ripper, which won't be on the recorded version, because here's what happens usually. Typically, I film my live shows and they go up on my Patreon. Now, unfortunately, for some reason, maybe it was human error. Maybe somebody forgot to press the record button. Maybe that somebody was me. I thought I pressed it. I could have sworn I pressed it, but clearly I did not. So I did not record the show, which is a shame because it was very funny, because I went off on many, many tangents, as is my way. But yeah, it was a really great show in the Comedy Cavern, Coughlin's Comedy Cavern in Cork. I think it's actually one of my favourite shows I've ever done. It was sold out, which was amazing, and the place was full. It was packed to the point where there was just no space to fit any more people in, at least not in a safe manner. So it was fabulous, and it was great, and people were chatting. It was just a good time, and that's fine in itself. But I live at the very top of the country, and Cork is at the very bottom of the country. So if you don't know Irish geography, like I'm at the top, it's at the bottom, and there's no real easy direct route. So it's actually easier and cheaper for me, and not exactly the longest journey either, for me to fly from Donegal to Dublin and then get the bus from Dublin to Cork. And that's what I did, and I did the reverse. But as I land in Dublin Airport, Sunday morning, there was this massive queue outside, and I'm like, this is wild. I've never seen a queue outside the airport before. Turns out that in that area, there had been a power outage. It affected Terminal 2, but not Terminal 1. So we are just in this massive queue outside. It's further than the length of the building. It's like double the size of the building. And I'm at the back of it at this point. And an hour goes by and I'm somewhere in the middle. And, you know, we've had people come down and they're going, we're looking for like JetBlue passengers. Come with us if you're JetBlue. Or Aer Lingus flight to Chicago at 11:05. Come with us now. You know, things like that. Because of the power outage, they had auxiliary power on. They managed to get what was going. But like the escalators weren't working. There was like one lift for emergencies and for accessibility and stuff. But like the escalators were down. We were running upstairs. It was very fun. And the check-in had to be all manual check-in. So like for your cases, if you were checking in a bag, it all had to be done manually because the conveyor belts weren't working either. So it was like a whole situation. And so it gets to the point where we're standing there and somebody goes, you know, I'm just going to ask and see what's going on. And she goes up and she comes back and she's like, there's a line on the other side of the airport coming in from the other direction. And like there's no real movement. And it was just like, shit, okay, well, I guess we'll just wait another wee while. And then another woman goes up and asks, because it's always women. She goes up and asks and comes back and she goes, yeah, if you have to drop in a bag, you're doing it such and such. But if you've already pre-checked in and you've got only hand luggage, you can just go in. And I was like, sweet. Finally, travelling light has worked for me. And so off I go, head into the airport. And there's just queues everywhere. Anyway, I run up the stairs, I get to where I need to be, I go through security, which isn't actually that crazy because most people are stuck checking in. But anyway, get through the airport, and as I walk in and get past security, the line for TSA, the TSA pre-check for going to the States, is running the length of just the area past security. And because I have to go down to my gate, and my gate to get to there is I have to go past the pre-check again. So when I get down there, the line is going all the way through. It's like doubling back through the place. It was just crazy. Like luckily loads of, you know, flights were delayed. Like my flight was delayed by an hour. But I was like, worst case scenario. I was standing outside like, I might get the bus home. I'll figure it out. Like it's fine. As I was too tired to like be that worried about it. I think when you live in a state of consistent anxiety, it's just my ADHD life, that when you're faced with an actual issue and problem, you're like super chill about it because you're like, oh, I've prepared for this. But anyway, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, quit your jibber jabber. In fact me. In fact you I will. But first, we've got to get our source on. Our sources are Looking Back, Australia's Emu Wars by Jasper Garner Gore. The Great Emu War, in which some large flightless birds unwittingly foiled the Australian Army by Beck Crew. A Handbook of the Birds of Western Australia by Hubert Massey Whittle and Dominic Lewis Cervanty. Boom and Bust, Bird Stories for Dry Country by Rob Henshin, Leo Joseph and Libby Robin. I also have some really fun articles, contemporary articles from the Argus in Perth. We have Emu War Defended. Rain scatters emus. Elusive emus. War on emus and Emu War again. Yeah. And of course our old favourite history.com. So are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then let's begin. That being said, before we get into anything this week, I'm well aware that the last episode, The Kerry Babies, was very heavy. It was traumatic and gut-wrenching, which is why it had a warning. But I know a few people that had to like just take a break and they had to like just, I don't know, watch Bluey or something just to completely chill out, you know, some Fraggle Rock. But I really don't like doing stuff that's too heavy one after another, because I don't need to be like immersing myself in sort of that rage and pain and fear. And so I always try and make things a wee bit easier, so that whenever I do a sort of heavy episode like the Kerry babies, that I would do something a wee bit sillier afterwards. Because history, although full of very sad, very horrific events, also had some funny shit happen. Like when Australia fought the emus, and the emus won. Spoiler alert. But let me tell you for why. So during the First World War, Australia starts this soldier settlement scheme. I'm not saying that it's bad, that it's a scheme. You know, schemes aren't automatically nefarious. Maybe they just really liked alliteration. Whom's to say? So the soldier settlement scheme starts like 2015, I think. No, that's wrong. That's a whole millennium in the wrong direction. No. Let's not do that. That is incorrect. 1915. So basically, there's this perception of, as very rose-tinted glasses of it, right? There's this thing called the yeoman ideal. And it's this view that agricultural activity is virtuous, and there is a sort of societal value of farming communities. Now, what this basically means is they think that if you live in a farming community and you're involved in that sort of rural agricultural society, that you're going to be sort of like a nicer, better person. You're going to be a more productive member of society, like not only from like a physical point of view, an economic point of view, because you are providing, food, because you're growing food to eat and whatnot, but you're also sort of boosting sort of morality and good family values and work ethic and everything that sort of is the core of like good society, yada, yada, yada. So there's this belief that it's going to create social stability and economic productivity, which is just good for everybody, And the whole point is that anyone who is discharged from the army, they're given these plots of land. Because when soldiers were discharged from the army, when they returned from war, whether it was from, serving their time, an injury, whatever, right? Whenever they were done, there wasn't really a lot to come back to. There wasn't a lot of options for them. And when you don't really have those options, you're kind of more open to suggestions and possibilities. If you've got nothing to lose, you're going to go for it, So after serving in the army, men were, more open to colonising, settling in areas of Australia. And see, Australia automatically joined the First World War because part of the British Empire, right? It's all connected. So when Britain declared war on Germany, like Australia was automatically in it. Like there was no option, no consideration. They were just part of it, So after 1916, there's like 5,030 soldiers, all in all, who take part in the soldier settlement scheme. And this is over a period of time. It's not just like 5,030 like all at once. I think it starts off with like 2,500 and then like a bit more, and then they dwindle back down like near the end. So veterans were given huge tracts of land, or moderate tracts of land, and they mainly farmed the two main staples of what every society needs: wheat and sheep. It's the core of every main society. Like, sheep are great, right? One, wool, wool is fabulous. It is so useful. Like, it's great for everything. And also sheep are delicious. Like, so you've got options. You also have milk and cheese and all the other options, but, they're still delicious. Lamb chops, play along. Anyway, by September 1920, the Australian government begins to run out of land to give to the veterans. I say it runs out of land, runs out of decent land, because areas, as you know, are finite. But it's not just Australian soldiers, right, that are being given this. It's British soldiers too. So, like, they're both getting this option. So the government starts offering areas that are a bit more remote. And by a bit more remote, I mean back ass of nowhere. Basically, or at least it was at the time, it's now known as Perth. How do you know where the border of Perth is? There's a river. Like, hey, which I think is like a very reasonable boundary. Like, if you can use a river as a boundary, that makes perfect sense, because you see the river. It's a visual boundary. Like, you can't bugger that up. But anyway, so they're sending them to Perth, because they're not going to send them, like, inward, because there's only so far deep into the centre of Australia you can go, because that's why you notice, like, all the outside bits, all the coastal areas are colonised, but, like, the deeper you get into the bush, like, nobody knows what's there. Nobody knows what's in the centre of the bush. Like, we don't know. Like, geez, the dodo could still exist for all we know, and it's going to be right in the middle of the bush. Like, a dodo in the bush, right? Right? But anyway, they're all being sent to, like, Western Australia. They're moving out to Perth. They're sort of settling on the land there, and they're changing it a wee bit because they're making it sort of farm ready, right? And they kind of create like a wheat belt, which is, interestingly enough, what it ends up being referred to, because that is a place now, or like a region. A region is also a place. Shut up. Anyway, remember, these are soldiers, not farmers. I mean, they might have been farmers before they were soldiers, but the majority of these guys didn't farm. And so, like, after this whole, like, scheme is being done, Justice Pike ends up being like, yeah, it didn't work because the settlers weren't suitable, which is like, basically saying, they were shit at farming, and that's why it didn't work out, as opposed to, we didn't teach people how to farm appropriately, and as such, it didn't work. Like, I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff into it, but, like, go over there and dig is not really a good basis for teaching somebody how to do anything, unless you want to teach them how to dig. So the farmers, they're already struggling a wee bit, right? And things go from bad to worse, because like most of the world, Australia is also affected by the Great Depression, and the wheat prices drop. I mean, the sheep prices, who knows, maybe sheep is fine, but like, the wheat prices drop, and so they really need to make sure that all the wheat they're growing is decent, that it is going to be bountiful. Like, they have to try and get more of it, really. And the government is promising these subsidies, you got to keep growing the wheat, like, we need the wheat, we need to do this, and the farmers are like, sure, government, we'll do that. So they're mainly growing wheat. That's kind of a big issue for them. And then on top of that, they also have a pretty large bird problem. And by that, I mean they have a problem with large birds. Enter the emu. So emus, fun fact, are native to Australia, and they only occur there naturally. So if you see an emu and it's not in Australia, that shit's stolen. Somebody nicked that bird. I mean, they may have nicked other birds and then bred those birds in captivity, but naturally, only Australia is where emus exist. Now, they were a protected species, like, for a long time, but as a general rule, they're, like, grand. Like, they're fine. Although, some of their subspecies are endangered. In addition, several subspecies became extinct due to colonization. So when the settlers sort of showed up, they were just like hunting and destroying habitats and like just all that kind of stuff, right? The typical thing. And emus, I'm sorry, are kind of scary for me because I don't like animals that are taller than me. I find them terrifying. So these flightless birds, which are omnivores, by the way, so they eat, not sheep, by the way, they eat wheat, they eat veg, they eat bugs. So like they kind of, whatever's around, nom, 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 nom. And they can go weeks without eating. Like, how is this not scary? And it's 6'3", so like 1.9 meters. Like they are taller. They are taller than tall men. Just big motherfuckers, right? They're, what, isn't like Hugh Jackman's like 6, is he? Is Hugh Jackman 6'3"? Somebody is 6'3". They are very tall. They can run very fast, like 48 kilometers or like 30 miles per hour. Like they can run, okay? They can run. They got big bloody beaks. They don't need to eat, and they can go like ages without drinking as well. But then when they do come across like water sources, they're just like, but like they don't need to do that. I mean, like, Katie, and now talking about animals. Listen, I watched Animal Planet and other such nature shows with my brother for like years. He keeps trying to get me to watch fishing shows, but I just care more about anything else. I'll watch a show about tanks before I watch a show about fishing. Like, fucking hate tanks. I just find sort of machinery like quite boring to discuss, like when people exist, you know what I mean? Like, just anyway, so the emus are hardy wee fucks and big scary birdies, okay? So because the emus, they were pretty decent. People didn't really bother them. You didn't bother the emus. Shit was good. But then they turned into a pest for farmers. See, emus, they migrate, like most birds do. Oh, did I mention they're flightless? Like they run, but they don't fly. I think of a velociraptor without the claws, right? It's just anyway. Emus, they migrate because they're birds, and so they would try and get towards the coast, for breeding time. So like, I think they could have like several like clutches of eggs per like mating season, and it's actually the male emu which protects the eggs. So they would like lose a bunch of weight because they would just like not eat, because they would just be like, what's the word? What is the word? When you incubate the eggs, it sits on them, keeps them toasty. Anyway, they do that. And then the woman gets to go out and, the female emu goes out and does what she wants. Anyway, emus, they're migrating and the farms are suddenly in their way, right? And not only is there wheat, which is bloody delicious because they're buds and they're like yummy, but they also have like water sources because, they've put infrastructure in the area to support these farms, right? So the birds come down, like they got food, they got water, they've got somewhere comfy to lie on, because they'll also like lie on like the wheat, they'll flatten it and like ruin it. I like to think they're just like gorging themselves on the eat and then they just fall over because they're just so full. Like, when you eat too much and you're like, I need to lie down right now. Like, that's what they're going through. But again, not too fussed about the sheep. So, the Campion district in the wheat belt in Western Australia is now being overrun by fucking emus. And by 1932, veterans were losing their shit because they're desperately trying to grow wheat. And these massive birds are ruining it between the sleeping and the eating and just general pestiness. Oh, and they're also like leaving massive holes in their fences, so other critters are getting in, so like rabbits and dingoes and other such nonsense. So they're just causing a wee bit of a commotion, to be honest. Because it starts off and there's like a couple of buds, you know what I mean? There's a couple here, a couple there, and then there's like maybe 50 buds, and that's, you know, manageable. And maybe there's 100 or a couple hundred over this entire area, and you're like, that's fine. They're just buds. And then there's 20,000 emus invading this region. 20,000. That is, I believe the technical term is, a fuckload of emus. And the veterans are pissed off, and they want to get through this cost of living crisis, and they want to just start like killing emus. Like, let me just get rid of them. And they're promised the subsidies from like the government, but these subsidies, like for the wheat, don't come. So they are stressing the hell out. So they need to deal with this. And they're like, we need to get rid of these emus. We need to control this problem. And they're like, we need to kill emus. I mean, maybe they thought they could eat the emus. You know, because you can eat emu, right? Like, one, you know they're eating well because they're eating all your wheat. So that's some quality food right there. So I specifically looked this up earlier because I was like, can you eat emu meat? Like, because, you know, sometimes you're like, oh, there's a bird or there's an animal, but you can't actually eat it because, like, it doesn't taste nice. Like, the reason why we're not more cannibalistic, really, is because human flesh doesn't really taste very nice. Like, that's why, you know, a lot of larger predators, like when they do eat humans, they don't really eat all of it because they're like hungry, but then they eat it. And once, you know, like when you're really desperate and you eat some kind of food that you're not really keen on and you eat it anyway because you're just so bloody hungry. And then as you start to get full, you're like, I'm not really feeling this. And then you're repulsed by it and don't want to eat it. Like, that's what like eating humans is like. I mean, eating them in the bad way, not the good way, you know? And so emu meat, and I looked this up. Emu meat is an excellent alternative for health-conscious consumers who love the taste of beef. Like, you know, everything tastes like chicken. Part of the emu tastes like beef. So red emu meat is similar in taste and texture to lean beef, but lower in cholesterol, fat, and calories. And the name of that meat, like, you know, pork comes from a pig, beef comes from a cow, ratite comes from the emu. And apparently the thigh meat is the best. Let me tell you, everyone loves a bit of thigh meat. So these ex-soldiers, they are just maybe hungry for emu, maybe stressing out a wee bit, and they decide that they're going to start like picking up arms and they're going to just kill these emus. And so they're doing that, but the emus just keep coming, just like a conveyor belt of emus. Like, you know when you try and leave a conversation and the person just keeps talking and keeps trying to engage you in it and you're just trying to slowly shuffle out the door? It's like that. It's like that. Now, the farmers, they end up bringing their concerns to the Minister of Defence, Sir George Pearce, because they want the essentials. Buckets and buckets of bullets. I love this actually, because they're like, can you give us ammunition? And he's like, how about I give you some soldiers? And they're like, sure, I guess, that's fine. And so they end up sending a bunch of like soldiers over to Western Australia. And they do this for a couple of reasons. One, for PR, because it looks great because Australia is supporting the struggling veterans outside of Anzac Day. Like, oh, we're helping them. We're so considerate. And it's like, you didn't pay them what you said you were going to pay them, but spin it, guys, I guess. And two, the military thought emus would make good target practice for the soldiers. Because they're 6'3", They move about. They're bipods, like bipeds. Bipods. They got 2 legs and they run about. And they're like, yay, they're going to be like really handy for like shooting. And yeah, the soldiers are sent in by the government, who their hand is kind of forced at this point because the farmers had banded together and were threatening to just not provide any more food. They were like, we're not going to give you the wheat because you're not giving us our subsidies. You're not helping us do shit. These birds are just bad. They're, ruining our minds. They're playing rock music. Like, they're just bad guys. Yeah. And so they're fucking things up. You have to do something. And so they're like, guns. Our problems are solved with guns. So on the 2nd of November 1932, enter the Australian Army, ready to fuck up some emus. Which seems like the perfect time to take a break, to listen to our sponsors. Or, if you're in an area which doesn't have our sponsors, a moment of silence for the emus.
If you enjoy bizarre true stories, then the Useless Information Podcast is the podcast for you. For example, did you know that author Robert Louis Stevenson gave his birthday away? Or that there was a football team that played for 6 years before someone realized that the school never ever existed? Or that a dog in upstate New York was once placed on trial for murder? Well, to hear these and hundreds of additional fascinating true stories from the Flipside history, be sure to check out the Useless Information Podcast. That's the Useless Information Podcast, podcasting worldwide since 2008 and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. Be sure to check it out.
Throughout history, royals across the world were notorious for incest. They married their own relatives in order to consolidate power and keep their blood blue. But they were oblivious to the havoc all this inbreeding was having on the health of their offspring. From Egyptian pharaohs marrying their own sisters to the Habsburgs' notoriously oversized lower jaws, I explore the most shocking incestuous relationships and tragically inbred individuals in royal history. And that's just episode 1. On the History Tea Time podcast, I profile remarkable queens and LGBTQ+ royals, explore royal family trees, and delve into women's medical history and other fascinating topics. I'm Lindsay Holiday, and I'm spilling the tea on history. Join me every Tuesday for new episodes of the History Tea Time podcast, wherever fine podcasts are enjoyed.
And we are back! I hope you enjoyed the advert and or the moment of silence for the emus. So the soldiers, they're being sent. It's November, so it's like Australian summertime. And they're led by Major Gwynedd Purves Wyn Aubrey Meredith of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery. I may have pronounced his name wrong, but I wanted to make sure I got all of it in. We're just going to call him Meredith from here on in. But yeah, they didn't fuck around. They're like, we're bringing in all these dudes. So Meredith shows up in the Campion region with his troops, his commanding soldiers, Sergeant McMurray, and his gunner O'Halloran, armed with 2 Lewis guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. A Lewis gun is a machine gun that was popularised by the British Army during the First World War. Yes, I did look it up because I didn't know what a Lewis gun was. Listen, I don't know guns and I don't know vehicles for the most part, but here I am. Look, I went to the effort of looking it up, okay? I did that for you so that you wouldn't have to. But you can if you want to, because I'm not here to control your life. I'm just here to provide you with some fun history and many smutty dresses. So they go out and they spot 50 birds, but they're a wee bit out of range. And the farmer sort of join them, and they try to herd the emus so that they can create an ambush. In this absolutely backfires because this freaks the birds out and they scatter. They are running in every which way. They are just going in different directions. It is pure, unadulterated chaos. It's like, and some are just out of range, but the gunners are like, we're going to try and shoot them anyway. This does not work. The second round does manage to get a number of emus because they get like a wee bit closer, like they do their best, right? Undeterred, they continue looking round for the birds and they come across this spring which has another flock in later in the day, and these guys, they're slightly more successful with this attempt. But perhaps, and this is a direct statement, perhaps a dozen birds are slain. Like, they think maybe 12 at this point. 2 days later, on November 4th, they come across 1,000 emus at a watering hole. It's not a watering hole, it's a dam. Watering hole just sounded better. So they set themselves up, they get nice and close, making sure they're within firing range. And then they let her rip. Her is the Lewis gun in this scenario. 12 birds are hit. A dozen of them fall to the ground in quick succession. And then, thud, 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 the gun jams. So the other emus, because, they've just loud noises, birds are falling to the ground. They're like, shit, no. And just like before, 1,000 emus are just running chaos. And they've hit 12 of them. There's 980 left. 980 emus doing that weird bird screaming thing and just running around. That sounds like a fun time. So the troops then move south where the birds are allegedly tamer. They're going to be easier if we go down this way. And if you're keeping score at this point, everybody, we're currently at emus 1, Australian Army 1. The army get the second round because they got 12. In one go. They got them, right? They actually refer to it as limited success. That's in the report. I love it so much. By day 4, they are starting to respect their opponents. The Australian artillery are like, you know what, these emus? They are not as stupid as they are supposed to be. They run in packs, like most animals do. And they have a leader in each pack. They actually talk about this, they're so serious. There's a leader in each pack. And he keeps watch and warns the flocks of an enemy approaching, allowing them to escape before the army approaches. There's a lookout bird, and he's warning sign, danger, danger, Will Robinson. The gun guys are back. So they're well, we need to outsmart these birds. They're trying to think of how we're going to do it. They come up with the idea they're going to MacGyver a moving gun. And so they mount one of the machine guns onto a truck. Which clearly they did not think about too hard, because they mount a machine gun onto a truck and then try to aim at the moving target while they themselves are moving. Over bumpy terrain. It's not the most considered of plans. It is a concept of a plan. So they're just making it harder for themselves, really. So the gunner literally just can't shoot, he can't aim because he's just... And then they just start ploughing into birds because they don't know what else to do. They can't actually keep up with most of the birds because they're just running faster than the truck can. But the one bird actually, I don't know if it was kamikazing into it, but gets hit by the truck and it like gets caught underneath, like in the steering equipment, and then the truck ends up just veering off track and plows like right into a farmer's fence, like whack, 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 whack. Now, the gunners were expecting to just like, just mow down the emus. They thought it was going to be easy. That's what they thought. It was going to be like bang, 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 right? They thought this was going to be a simple affair and that they would just like flock together and not move, and they would just be like, easy target practice. But one ornithologist, which I was reading, said that the emus had adopted guerrilla warfare. Now, I'm not one to judge someone who is respected and an expert in their field, but I do find it a wee bit difficult to consider emus conducting guerrilla warfare as opposed to just like running and hiding in a panic. Like, maybe they're well organised. Maybe this is their plan. Maybe we need to get Dr. Dolittle here and find out what the emus are up to. But I have my suspicions that they're just going, and running like fuck. So at this point, they managed to cull like 50 birds. So again, if you're keeping the tally, emus 2, army 1. By the 6th day of this endeavour, the PR isn't PRing, right? It's gone horribly wrong. Meredith is doing math, and he is very aware that he is using 2,500 bullets to kill like 200 birds in total. And that's lucky, like a quarter of the ammo on barely any emus. Like, they don't have enough like ammo to get through this. And so they end up being like pulled from this anyway. And Major Meredith compares emus to Zulus. I shit you not, because of course we can't have the past without a wee bit of casual racism in there. It's just wild. And one politician ends up like having a discussion in Parliament, like, should the troops involved in the Emu War get a medal? And his opponent, without skipping a fucking beat, goes, yeah, if that's the case, the emus who won should also get medals. And this kind of got rid of that idea pretty sharpish. And by November 8th, the troops and their guns are pulled out of the Emu War. And the farmers, they are just distraught at this. They are desperate. It's the Australian summer, and the emus are going hell for leather on the wheat. They are raiding farms in the thousands. And these reports are coming into the government along with a report from the base commander. He's like, we got nearly 300 emus actually, not 50 or 200, but 300. And this changes everything for some reason. And by the 12th of November, the government approves to send the troops back in. And Pierce goes to the Senate and he's like explaining that the emus are like a massive threat to like Australia because they're going through the wheat belt. Oh, and he didn't need to justify spending really too much, because I forgot to say this earlier. Like, they agreed to send the troops in, but on the condition that the farmers, the veterans, would like feed and house and like care for the soldiers when they were there. So like the government wasn't spending that money. So yeah, the military gives the guns to the Western Australian government, but the Western Australian government had to provide their own gunners. And because there was a lack of experienced gunners in Perth, who has to come back on the scene? But Meredith. After a couple days break, he is back out in the field. The wheat field. And by the 13th of November, the troops are back at it, and they manage to kill 40 birds. 3 days later, the less successful, they get a couple, not many. It's not great. It does not look good for them. And he is like doing his math. Like I said, Meredith likes his numbers. And he realizes that it takes 10 bullets to kill one bird. Because by the end of this, they have 986 confirmed kills, which is not a lot when you consider they used 9,860 rounds of bullets, which seems very round for a number for me, but he's like, more died from their injuries, obviously, because like, I'd say like 2,500, because he's just throwing numbers at the wall and seeing what sticks. But yeah, it's a thing. It's like those birds they're very strong. They're very bullet resistant, which is, I think, a good skill to have, as any creature. I mean, how they evolved to like not be too bothered by bullets, great, good for them. Good for you emus. So they end up being recalled on the 10th of December. And there's all this criticism, like, they used machine guns. And they're like, why did they have to use it on the birds? And they're just like, it saved what was left of the wheat. Which does not make me optimistic in any sense of the word. And like, people are just going like well into sort of, I'm going to say emu praise. Like, they're really into emus at this point. Like, one guy says that if they had a military division, they could face any army because they were basically invulnerable to bullets. Like the Terminator, they're just like coming at you. Like, if you could weaponize an emu, like, you've just got, I mean, it's a terrifying killing machine if you weaponize an emu, but, you know, super strong, really hard to shoot, very important. And like, every couple of years, the farmers come back to the government and are requesting assistance. They're like, please help me more. And the government keeps saying no. They keep rejecting them. At one point, the veterans request bombs. They're like, can we just blow this shit up, right? Can we just blow the emus to smithereens? Can we explode them? Is that a feasible option here? And the government's like, what? No. You cannot explode the emus. Do not explode the emus. Like, that, no, you shouldn't have to have that as a warning label, but don't explode the emus. And they're like, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to send in the army. We're not going to send you in machine guns, Lewis guns. We're not going to send you in the shit. Because bullets are expensive. And I don't know, weird feeling, might be another war around the corner. Whom's to say? Now, what they do bring in is they bring in a bounty hunting provision. Because, like, on top of the fact that emu meat is apparently really good for you and allegedly delicious, the emu feathers were actually used for some kind of army hat, if I'm not mistaken. Like, they really used that specific brown plumage of all the plumage in the world, but that's what they like. I think also the Australian army did not want to have to face the emus again. There's probably somebody there with a weird form of like PTSD who just sees birds in his sleep. Like, he can't walk past the pigeons because he just starts getting like Nam flashbacks. He's like, no, can't be dealing with that. So yeah, the army doesn't go back. They do not send them back. They don't send them their shit. But they do sort of allow bounty hunting of emus, which turns out to be far more successful. And over a period of 6 months in 1934, 57,034 emus are like, their bounty is claimed. Like, how one and not the other? You know what? I understand that hunters and soldiers are different, but also maybe don't use a machine gun. A sniper, that's what I was thinking of earlier. Like, why not just have a sniper with a decent scope, right? I feel like they had that back then. So if you get a sniper, they could just pew, 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 pew. Like, Would that not be the more logical option to get the emus down? Like, listen, I'm not going to tell you how to murder giant birds. I'm just saying, it feels like that should have been considered. So yeah, you've got the bounty hunters, you've got like better fences. Like that's one thing they did. They built better fences. And there was talk of like maybe going back into war with the emus, but listen, they've already defeated you twice. You don't want to go into that again because third time is the charm. But yeah, the time the Australian army fought the emus and the emus won. So like by the time all this goes down, like a bunch of farmers just say, fuck this, we're Game of Soldiers, and off they go. They just like leave. And by the end of this scheme, like there was like over 5,000 and there's about 2,000 left by the time this is all done because they're like, it's fine, we'll make it work. But yeah, so ends the story of the Australian Emu War. If you liked my retelling of this story, even though my voice is buggered and I'm doing my best, feel free to rate and review 5 stars. Love your faces. Love you so much for that. You can catch me on the socials. I'm all over the place. I've got a few more gigs coming up. I've got a couple in Dublin. I've got Belfast. And then I think the US information will be coming out soon for next year once that gets locked in. And that's going to be a fun time. But so it's recommendation time, I think. Don't you think? I think so. So for watching, you know what? A bit of levity again. The Weird Al Yankovic movie. It's ridiculous. None of it is historically accurate. And I really, really love Evan Rachel Wood. Evan Rachel Wood as Madonna. It is funny and hilarious and she's gorgeous. So like, go watch that. And also Daniel Radcliffe is very funny. So it's a very good movie. And for reading, you should read Yellowface. Like it is wild. It's really good. Go read that. And for listening, I've actually been listening to the Red Handed podcast. I found it very, very soothing. They have very soothing voices and it helps me rest. Like I wish I could have that soothing a voice. Like, I fall asleep listening to you. Cool, no worries. Love that journey for you. But yeah, I find them really, really soothing and really relaxing, even though they're talking about really horrible stuff. But yeah, Red-Handed, that's my current audio obsession. It helps me rest. Oh, but if you hear Gimme Gimme by Rachel Zegler, like her version of it, like she does this thing, Aphrodite, don't forget me, Romeo and Juliet me. And it's amazing and it scratches like a good part in the back of my brain and I love it so much. So yeah, listen to that. That's fabulous. And with that, I'm going to bid you good night because my voice is about to go. Adios, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, my friends. Bye-bye.